Welcome to our present state versus history on Speaker. Here we are focused on the current events of our culture through the principles of our history, trying to make sense of the culture and the mindset of today. I am your host, Ray Mayfield. Okay, folks, here we are again. We'll call this Self-Evident Truth Part 2, I guess, and we'll see how far we get on this little podcast. Once again, I appreciate your support. Check out the website, thetruegospelchurch.org, and the many links there. Can't say enough about the New Life Fellowship Church in Neosho. If you don't have a home church, I'd like to invite you there. Meet Pastor Mark and Bonnie Buzzard. Check out the University of Christian Studies and Seminaries, Dr. Guy and Sister Kathy. Great folks as well. National Center for Constitutional Studies. Check out the Black Robe Regiment, on and on. Of course, our Facebook pages, our present state versus history. And appreciate you listening to the Spreaker platform this podcast is announced on, plus any other platform that you're getting your podcasts for our present state versus history. Those of you that are lovers of America and true patriots, being labeled as a Christian nationalist extremist, I guess, is what got this all started going on. And we're dealing with the basic fundamental ideas of where our alienable rights have been established, whether they've been established by God or whether the Constitution establishes them. We have these people who are setting in public office right now today that think that your freedoms are completely dependent upon the government of this nation to allow you to be free, that it is a privilege that's been provided by the government of whatever form that may be. And that's nonsense, because this is a country of the people, by the people, for the people. And the people need to wake up to that and realize that they're in control. You know, it goes back to years ago when we had kids who were still at home. There was a movie come out by Disney, of all people, and it's called The Bug's Life. And, you know, there was a lot to that little old movie. You know, there was one scene where they were in the bar, you know, and the grasshoppers, you know, they were coming in. They were taking all of the stuff that the ants had put together, you know, and there was a little conflict going on between the two tough guy grasshoppers in the bar. And one of them said something about, you know, the way the ants outnumbered them, you know, and he boxed him and told him to be quiet. If they ever figured out that they outnumbered them, they'd be in trouble, you know. And they had one little old ant that was, he wouldn't cower down to him. He was what I would call a nonconformist, and brought the whole regime of the grasshoppers down, you know, and the ants prevailed at the end of the day. But unfortunately, that's not how it always works out in the natural life of things. And we're going to deal a little bit today with Mr. Blackstone. We dealt with Mr. Locke a little bit in the last episode, and we're going to talk a little bit about Mr. Blackstone today, and of course the fathers and our Constitution and the basis premises that set these things in motion, because our inalienable rights to such as life, which that's the thing that got us started on this. We don't really have to go any further than that. That right to live and exist and be and move freely upon this earth is given to us by God. And all of those things that go along with the support of that life, they're assumed or implied in the right to life, okay? So I have the right to live, and therefore I have the right to live free and abundantly, as long as my endeavors of life are not hindering the life of someone else. I don't have the right to take a life. I don't have a right to prevent someone from having life, no more than anybody else has a right to prevent me from living and having life. And so we walk in harmony with one another, if we help each other have life and have life more abundantly, then we prosper quicker and we have an easier life because we have help. See, these are the things that are the basic fundamental rights that Mr. Blackstone basically is talking about. Of course, Mr. Blackstone, if you don't know who he was a man who taught law, okay? He was, let's see, he established classes for the first law school at Oxford in 1753. His lectures on the English law were published in 1765 and were as widely read in America as they were in England. Okay, his commentaries on the law of England, Blackstone propounded the general accepted idea that when the Supreme Being formed the universe, he organized it and then impressed certain principles upon that matter, from which it can never depart, and without which it would cease to be. This comes from the Blackstone Commentaries on English Law, Edward William Carey Jones, 2 volumes, and San Francisco Bradcroft Whitney Company of 1916. Okay, Mr. Blackstone, he was a very staunch teacher, if you will, on what he called the natural law. And that moral code clearly distinguished between right and wrong. And these are the things that our founding fathers had settled on, if you will, in their dealings with creating our Constitution, because they believed that the moral code was very clear, and as Blackstone spelled out in his lectures, and they believed that the basic elements of right and wrong were spelled out in those natural elements of law. And Blackstone, he believed that the laws of the universe, if you will, were directly connected with the laws of nature, human nature, and the elements of life as we live it. Some of the things that Mr. Blackstone said, he called, let's see, here's a quote. He says he called the law of nature, and that there are laws for human nature just as sure as they exist for the rest of the universe. He said the laws for human nature had been revealed by God, therefore the laws of the universe, or natural law, must be learned through scientific investigation. Blackstone stated that upon these 2 foundations, the law of nature and the law of revelation, depend all human laws. So he's saying that as we have these natural things that are set in motion, the law of nature, and through our, revelation of these things, that all human laws any created, they're all based on these premises, see? So it's not just by chance or it's just some whim. These are things that have been set in motion that are absolute. You can't do anything to change them. And I like to use the description or the analogy of gravity. When we talk about law, oftentimes people go in, and especially in the Christian community, their mind goes to, the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not this and thou shalt not that. Well, and though that's good, but it's not. But those 10 Commandments, they are based on, the basic premises of these things that Blackstone's talking about. For instance, it says, thou shalt not kill. Commandment number 1. That's the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. See, so we have the right to life. We don't have the right to take that life. We don't have a right to hinder that life. That's a natural law that's been put in motion. It's in the human race. It's in plants. It's in, life itself. Light It's, light. You turn the light on. That in itself is life. When you study light, you'll find that there is life. Life is dependent on light. Light and life are intertwined. They are co-inhabitors, I guess you could say. And so God said, light be, and light was. And so therefore life became, and life is. We have all forms of life on this earth, and that life is just as valuable, and we should take as much care for the life of our environment as we do for the life of each other. Does that make the life of our environment superior to the life of others? No. I'm going to, if I have to decide whether I'm going to kill an animal or let a human die, then the animal is going to suffer and the human is going to survive, because that's the natural progression of things. We have the chain of command, if you will. It comes along these things. All of these laws are intertwined upon each other. So we know some of these things just because it is the way it is, and then we learn some of them through observation and through the process of living. It's like, we'll go back to gravity. The law of gravity is in motion. It holds us in place, and when we get up in a high elevated place, if we lose our footing, we're going to be pulled to the center of the earth, and we're going to fall. That law of gravity is going to prevail over our desire or whatever we do in order to prevent that. Once we are loosed in the atmosphere to fall, that gravity is going to pull us to the center of the earth. So what do? Then we create things to protect us from the negative attributes of that gravity, right? So we create walkways, we create sidewalks and balconies, and we create guardrails to keep us from falling over the edge. And then, if that's not enough, we're not self-motivated, or we're not self-regulated, and we want to climb on the guardrail, then guess what we do? We pass a law that says, don't climb on the guardrail. We'll fine you for $10, or, and so now we have the human progression of law being created because it is a direct result of the natural law of gravity that cannot be changed. We're trying to protect life, trying to protect the pursuit of happiness. See how these things are all intertwined? It's really not that complicated. And then we get off into these man-made things, because the things that the founding fathers realized by these things as the human animal, we want to control. We want to be in charge, right? So now we've created a law that says don't climb on the balcony. Well, now automatically somebody wants to be the guy that keeps everybody off the balcony, because he's got power and he can make them do things. And he gets control. And if we can make it profitable, we'll pay you $10 for every person you don't let get on the balcony. Well, guess what? Now we're going to have watchdogs on the balcony. We're going to have guys with billy clubs keeping you off the balcony, because at all costs, you're not going to get on the balcony because I'm making money at it. See there where that corruption comes in? See how that gets twisted around, and what was intended for good is now being used for evil. It's being used for the devices of man to control and to manipulate and to make money. There's no different than what's going on in our public spectrum, in our political spectrum today. George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, all those guys, they warned us about making our posts of honor positions of profit. We've turned these things in. These are the natural laws. These are the natural progressions of the human animal if he's left to his own devices and left unchecked. These are some of the things that Mr. Blackstone was talking about, and some of the things that our founding fathers understood to the fullness. Now, there's a lot of rhetoric was going around here in the past that, our founding fathers, they were all deists. They didn't believe in the God of Israel and Abraham and Isaac. They didn't believe in Jesus Christ and him crucified. They were just believed in this superior power, this deist idea. But the problem with that is, I'll just read a paragraph here that comes out of a book called The 5,000-Year Leap that was put on by the University of, wrong reference, is put on by the National Center for Constitutional Studies, talking about this. It says, It is also important to note that the founders did not look upon God as a mysterious theological force operating automatically and indifferently in nature, as the modern deists claim. But they believed that the Creator, who is both intelligent and benevolent, and therefore anxious and able to respond to people's petitions when they were deserving or in need of blessings and encouragement in a good cause. Days of fasting and prayer were commonplace in the early America. Most of the founders continually petitioned God in fervent prayer, both public and private, looking upon his divine intervention in their daily lives and singular blessings. They were continually expressing gratitude to God as the nation survived one major crisis after another. And it goes on talking about Mr. George Washington, and you can get that from the Rise and Fight Again of the New York Dodd and Mead Company from 1976, page 377, dealing with George Washington and the statements of the deists, you see, because they did believe in the hand of God moving in the affairs of men. They did believe that God orchestrated all of these events to bring us to the place that we were, and they did trust in God. There's so many different quotes here that I've got that we could read, but I want to. Here we go. The founding fathers were talking about the inalienable rights here, see, and we're talking about the formula that these folks believed were coming forth as what was inalienable. And I mean, I can go on and on. I'm really skipping a lot of information there that goes on about the concerning of the revealed law and Mr. Blackstone and the different statements that have been made. But you get the gist of where these men got these ideas. And the inalienable rights that were natural rights, the founders knew they existed, but enumerated several of them in our Declaration of Independence, okay? Now, that's not the Constitution, it's the Declaration of Independence. I realize it's a different document, but if you'll go back and read that Declaration of Independence, and you'll see these things, you'll see that these are some of the rights. This isn't by any means a full list of the inalienable rights that people have, but this is a list that they enumerated in the Declaration of Independence, okay? When they wrote this document, they declared the inalienable rights of man was to self-govern, to bear arms for self-defense, to own and develop and dispose of his own personal property. Well, you get me started on that personal property thing there. We got some serious problems with personal property going on in the state of Missouri. But the right for personal choice, the right of a free conscience, the right to choose your own profession, the right to choose your own mate, the right to begot one's kind or have children, the right to assemble together, the right to petition. That's not just the government, but it intended for the government and the petition, the right of freedom of speech, the right of free press, the right to enjoy the fruits of one's labor, the right to improve one's position through barter and sale, the right to contrive and invent, the right to explore the natural resources of the earth, the right to privacy, the right to provide personal security, the right to provide nature's necessities, air, food, water, clothing, shelter, the right to a fair trial, the right of free association, and the right to make a contract with another. These were just a few of the alienable rights that God has given all of mankind. You see, government doesn't give us the right to do these things. Government doesn't give us the right to bear arms. They can't take it away. Government does not give us the right to live. They cannot take it away. Government does not give us the right to provide air and food and water and shelter and clothing to live a life that is associated with who we want to associate with. And it does not give us the right to keep us from doing things to prosper by the fruit of our labor and the benefit of our exploits and to speak our minds clearly. The government does not give us those rights. They cannot take them away. In the Declaration of Independence on June 12th of 1776, Jefferson, in his language, he wrote, "All men are by nature equally free and independent and have certain inherent rights of which, when they enter into a state of society, they cannot by any compact deprive or devises other posterity, namely the enjoyment of life and liberty and the means of acquiring and possessing property, and the pursuing and obtaining of happiness and safety." Those are the words that he used, and that's in the Annals of America on 2 and 432. Okay, those are direct writings of Mr. Jefferson in his language. So I guarantee Mr. Jefferson believed that those rights came from God and not from government. That was set forth in the Declaration of Rights adopted by Virginia Assembly in June of 1776, which was before the Declaration of Independence, by the way. So we have a writing clearly for the home state of Mr. Jefferson declaring the same things that was written in the Declaration of Independence that was declared forth to the king by the colonies before the Revolutionary War, before the the Constitution of the United States, and before we walked into a place of freedom and prosperity as an independent nation. The words Declaration of Independence are very similar. In the words, it says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Because you see, we have the rights to these things. Personal property is an essential to the pursuit of happiness. It is a God-given right to own property, to have ownership of that property, to use to the benefit of your prosperity in your life. And the fact that we have all this taxation on our land is tyrannical. It is the thing that this nation was brought to blood to bring to pass, that men would have the ability to own and prosper their own property, whether it be land, whether it be the inventions of their devices, whether it be the benefit of the working of that land, whatever form it came in. It was the God-given right that we live in this prosperity. The Bible tells us that it is the Lord's will that we prosper, even as our souls prosper, see. So when we pray to the Lord God Almighty that He blesses what we put our hands to because of the God-given rights that He has given us to pursue a life of happiness and fulfillment, which means to educate our children in these things that we've been talking about on these podcasts. It means that we walk in the pursuit of life and we help our fellow man pursue that life through the liberty and the freedoms of private property rights, to the liberties and the freedoms to marry who you will marry, to have children and to grow them up and to walk in the prosperity of your souls. And that is the fundamental basics that this entire nation was built on, that our Constitution was built on, that our framing fathers built our Constitution on. They are not outdated ideas. They are the existence of humankind living in harmony and prospering. And if you'll go back to the before that 1900 generation and you look at the things from the conception of this nation up to 1900, this nation was the fastest growing, the most profitable nation. It was well, it still does produce more wealthy people than any other nation of the world. And after that 1900 generation, they put the income tax in place. They put these property tax things in place. They put all these rules in that didn't do anything but hinder, but yet we have still prevailed. Can you imagine what this country would be capable of if we went back to the original documents? We went back to the unadulterated Constitution. We got rid of all of these unconstitutional taxes and reforms and restraints, and just went back to enforcing natural law in the capacity that it needs to be, with a limited government, with limited power, with a limited ability to interfere in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Can you imagine? I don't think any of us can. The capacity with today's technology that this country would go forth and boom in. We started to see a little glimpse of it back when President Trump first took office, and that's the reason why we had this artificial pandemic loosed across this country to kill what he had moving again, because you turn the economic free enterprise machine of the United States of America loose and you let it operate on its own devices, you will see more money, more wealth, more happiness, more joy produced in a single generation than any time ever produced in the history of man. I believe that with all my heart and all my mind. You look at the loosing of this nation in the first 5,000 years after the Constitution the Constitution was created, and you look at how mankind developed and birthed forth after the Constitution of the United States, you'll see the writing on the wall. And I can see I'm way over my time again. I hope that I've covered the basis of the gist of these things. And until we meet again on the pod, have a wonderful day.